anyone care to add any thoughts or comments on the on wheat at all? Anything that people should be looking at relative to wheat, either relative to this report or what's happening in the wheat market?
Well, I mean, for the ending stocks, the trade estimate is only about 6 million bushels above the September report when it comes out to the U.S. carryout. As far as after they adjust production a little bit, in my opinion, there won't be many changes in the 2014-15 balance sheet for wheat on the demand side. The wheat market, in my opinion, the price reaction, even after factoring in maybe global numbers, there is a possibility USDA might get a little bit ahead of themselves and maybe slightly downward revise Argentina, maybe tackle the weather issues that happen across Australia. So maybe a downward revision in Australia and Argentina is warranted after adjusting to the StatsCan production report. We'll see a little bit of revision in the global production estimate after factoring in also the U.S. But the wheat market, in my opinion, the wheat prices probably should maybe follow corn a little bit after the report. That's just my initial reaction on that. But do you have anything?
Thanks, Terry. Jack, any thoughts on wheat?
Well, I agree with that a lot. I do kind of feel that wheat's probably made a harvest type of low, so even if it does come back down, you might see some buying interest. The one caveat that I throw at that is we're still pretty high priced when you look at competing wheats, especially like Russia and Europe. So maybe we won't get such a good price reaction if the corn and bean numbers come out big and we're down hard tomorrow. You could probably see wheat down pretty hard as well. It is possible to see Argentina, Australia, and Canadian production cut a little bit. It's just as likely that we could see perhaps a little bit of an uptick in Europe, Eastern Europe, and Russia as well. So, and I think China's supposed to have a pretty good crop this year as well, from what I keep hearing. So, I think when you look at it, there's plenty of wheat around the world either way, and I guess I don't feel like wheat prices need to do a whole heck of a lot from here, either up or down. I look for more market stability over there.
Great. Thanks, gentlemen. This time, we'll open it up to questions from those of our online viewers. So I want to remind everyone who is online and watching along, if you have questions for Terry or for Jack, please submit those in the lower right-hand box of that video player that you see. Hit the submit button, and we'll be sure to get those questions answered for you today. In the meantime, gentlemen, I have a couple of other questions for you to kind of kickstart our QA. Talked a little bit about weather. Obviously, always a big issue in agriculture. Terry and I were talking a little bit before the panel about some reports this week that perhaps the corn harvest is lagging behind past years' progress. What are you looking at beyond tomorrow's report? Any concerns about weather as it relates to the harvest of corn or soybeans moving ahead?
I guess not really. I think the weather next week, I guess, well, this weekend's supposed to look pretty nice. Then next week we get a couple days of rain and it dries out again. Autumn is one of the wetter periods of the year in the Midwest, so we're likely to have some delays. And we've certainly seen some, especially, we've had quite a bit of rain, for example, today in the southern Midwest and down into the Delta that's had many producers out of the fields. But I think part of the reason why the harvest has been slower is that we did get some of these crops planted pretty late. I think especially here in the northern part, I remember I was took a drive out in late May, out to Iowa and back, southwest Iowa and back, and I kind of went along I-80 on the way out, but then I went a little bit farther north than that on the way back in, and you could see a lot of corn and a lot of soybeans getting planted right at that time. And that's a little bit late, and a lot of those crops are just starting to get mature now. So I think the producer is ready to go with the equipment that he has anymore, it doesn't really take very long to get the harvest out of the ground. I think I'm less concerned about weather than I am about yield and production. I think that what's going to keep this harvest slow as much as anything is the fact that the yields have been so high that it's taken them that much longer to go through a row.
That's true. Some of the producers we talked to, since the yields are incredibly high, I remember driving through northern Ohio, and it looked like it's like a wall of corn going down some of those country roads. But it costs a lot of money to dry down corn if you cut it, and if it's sitting at 30% moisture, and you need to get it down to 14.5%, 15.5%. You're looking to spend maybe a little over $1 in order to do that. So there's a big incentive for producers to maybe just leave their corn in the fields, and because it's free to dry down in the fields. But maybe leave it in the field. It's going to take about we're probably looking at maybe a 1 to 2 week lag by maybe a little over mid-October, but by early November, there should be a good amount of the corn out of the ground. I'm predicting maybe upwards of maybe 80% of it out of the ground by then. But the corn does need to dry down, and that's why we're seeing a lot of producers focusing on cutting soybeans at the moment, which is certainly pressuring basis in the interior at the moment.
What about in the southern hemisphere? I know that there were some reports that, Jack, you mentioned a little bit or Terry, maybe it was you, relative to wheat, some concerns, I think, last month in Australia relative to drought there. Some reports this week that perhaps there's some more rain needed in Brazil, where they're starting their planting for soybeans. Concerned about weather elsewhere, southern hemisphere?
Well, at least in Brazil, I know I spoke at length with a couple of my people down there, and yeah, it's been dry, especially in northern, in the center-west region in Mato Grosso. But they're quick to point out that it's really a little bit early to get too terribly worried. If they don't get any rain started here in the next couple of weeks, then they're going to get a lot more concerned. So there's been sufficient amount of rain that they've been able to start planting already. And as of now, they know that they know, of course, that there's a potential, but they don't seem unduly worried about it. Down in southern Brazil, it's probably just a little bit too early to really start planting. I know I saw a report, though, in Argentina from the Bolsa de Buenos Aires down there that some initial planting of both corn and soybeans has been done, and under really good conditions. So for now, even though it might not be perfect, there certainly seems to be adequate moisture for both Brazil and Argentina, and I guess in this case of southern Brazil and parts of Argentina, maybe excessive moisture to get started, and maybe in the case of northern Brazil, they'd like a little bit more rain, but they're content with what they have.
I know that northern Argentina is a little bit on the drier side than what producers want down there. Mato Grosso is the big state in Brazil that might be a little bit on the dry side. There's already talk of maybe, if the beans go in maybe 1 to 2 weeks behind normal, you might see a little bit of lag in delivery by the end of January, February period for the beans to arrive at ports. But right now, I don't see that as a concern. There's at least, you still have at least 20 days where if Brazil gets plenty of rain, then the beans will go in a timely fashion. One thing about Argentina, however, it's not a weather problem, in my opinion. At this moment, it's the producers sitting on a huge amount of stocks down there, and it's also the financial crisis down there is definitely starting to impact the producers' thinking on whether or not they should plant beans. We're hearing that in some areas in Argentina, at current prices, the beans are unprofitable to plant down there. So I wouldn't be shocked to actually see the bean area go down from the previous year. There's a lot of incentive to maybe plant other crops, such as sun seeds, at the moment to take advantage of the high global prices they maybe switch to other commodities down there. But for Argentina, they may not get the record production that some people are banking on right now.
Moving away from weather in the southern hemisphere, because we are expecting such large yields this year in corn and beans. Curious what you gentlemen may be hearing from your customers out in the field or commercial customers as it relates to either storage or infrastructure issues such as transportation. Not looking for you guys to give away the secret sauce here on any of your customers, but what are you hearing from them? Do they have concerns about storing a potentially very large yield or transporting it to the elevators?
Well, I think they're certainly aware that there's a potential for that problem. I'm not too sure they've really come to any conclusion as to exactly how they're going to deal with it. But yeah, it's potential. I don't think there's a producer out there really, or very few anyway, that can really prepared to store this kind of a crop. And taking into consideration all the storage that's been built over the last 10 or 15 years, it's just a big crop, and we know we're going to have storage problems as we move forward. And I not only on farm, but I think a lot of the commercial elevator space will get filled up pretty quickly, and I expect to see a lot of corn on the ground. Probably spend a good chunk of the winter on the ground before they can finally get it picked up next spring. So that's going to be an issue. As for transportation, well, today, the government said today the Railroad Administration is going to force weekly reports out of the Class 1 railroads, and so it's going to be a situation. The transportation issues are going to be a situation that's closely monitored, and we all saw what happened up in Canada last year. Canada seems to have kind of gotten their situation a little bit better resolved, but there's every chance that we could have similar types of problems down here this year trying to move all that crop.
I mean, the United States, with these two big crops coming online, we need to see something similar to last year where export inspections maybe hit a record. I think it was back in November, one particular week. We need to see the O&D soybean crush hit a record this year. Ethanol plants, if they have the positive margins for the corn crush to be fairly robust, if you have a dollar that's rising and it potentially could slow exports, then we're going to really see a glut in the system. On top of already the anticipated logistical nightmares that some companies have already been reporting.
As we're kind of talking about storage and transportation, Terry, you and I were talking a little bit about how those factors may have impacted basis levels. Anyone care to comment on sort of recent trends in basis levels, or what are you keeping an eye on?
The basis, right, for this time of year is at historically high levels, but for beans this week, they broke pretty good across the interior. We're starting to see pretty good bean movement, but down at the Gulf, even though the beans have broke, corn's down as well, but I mean they're still fairly high. It's probably going to take another couple weeks to see the entire United States start to, for movement to maybe flow a little bit and see the basis overall kind of decline from these levels. But, for now it's starting to soften up a little bit, and it's just because of movement.
I would agree. I think you'll see probably the bean basis more severely impacted as we move forward. I think a producer right now, given the various price relationships, still more interested in selling beans than he is corn. Corn below the cost of production for a lot of producers, so he's probably more likely to put that away and move the beans. And I think we're starting to see that reflected in the interior basis levels. Given the relatively high cost of transportation that probably will continue for a while, you'll probably still continue to see rather high basis levels down at the Gulf, although I do suspect they will come down quite a bit, but still on a relative basis, still relatively high. And I think you'll see corn basis probably more variable as we move forward when the market finds itself in need of a little bit of corn. You'll see some spread action, you'll see some basis pops, and we'll get the corn moved then, and then once they get filled up, they'll probably back it right back down again.
I think we've got time for one more question before we get your final thoughts and comments. Terry and I were talking very briefly, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that we had record options trading volume in the month of September here at CME Group. Just in agriculture alone, we saw a 40% increase year on year in the options on our agricultural products. What are you hearing from customers? Are they flocking more to options to protect downside risk? Again, not looking for specific customer examples, but thematically, are you hearing anything from your commercial customers or producer customers that might be leading to this type of options growth over the last month?
I mean, if you go back 2 months, I mean, if you look at the charts, I mean, it's just been a steady downward trend up until a couple of weeks ago. But we've seen a lot of customers, whether it be commercial or large shippers or even producers, utilizing options more, especially in bear markets. We've seen basically maybe the option volume pick up from a commercial standpoint, but it's certainly been options have been certainly I guess more exciting than maybe some of the futures movements that we've seen over the past 6 weeks.
I think I'd say I've probably done more options business than I have the last couple of years, and I guess I'm not altogether sure why. I think a little bit has to do with the fact of risk avoidance, or at least defined risk, knowing what your risk is. I think that that's become perhaps a little bit more important, especially as prices have come down. They want to have a little better handle, better handle, and a little bit better way to manage the risk in price, and given that they can control the cost a little bit better using options, I think you've seen perhaps a little bit more interest because of that. They're not so exposed to margin risk, and margins are high. Let's face it. Prices have been high, so margins have been high, and I think you've seen more use of the options just because of that, and just because of the volatility that you've seen in the marketplace. It's a little easier to maintain a margin options position, especially a predominantly long-based options position in a market that's moving big in either direction or both directions, than it is to try and manage a futures position.
We've got time for a couple of closing comments. Terry, any final words? Any final thoughts?
Well, regardless of what USDA reports tomorrow, we're still looking at 2 very large crops for beans and corn, and I can't get when I reach down and even pencil push as many numbers as I can't get too bullish this market. You add this on top of potential record crops coming out of South America for beans. The Brazilian crop, the second crop, is always a bonus crop down in Brazil. They're going to plant a lot of beans in central Brazil. They're going to follow up with a lot more corn. It's kind of a cycle where you add both South America and the United States, and then you have the Chinese situation with the DDGs and the corn, where they're not importing from the United States. It's basically signaling I would just kind of a bearish move, and whatever USDA reports tomorrow, in my opinion, I think prices should be eventually trending lower over the short term.
Jack, you have the final word.
Oh my. I guess I would agree generally. I generally see no real reason to rally right at this time. it's a big crop, and in big crop years, usually the lows come in the last part of the crop, or the harvest, and not in the beginning. And right now we're maybe at the 25% level, maybe maybe a little higher than that in beans. I kind of doubt it, but certainly not that high in corn. And usually in a big crop year such as this one, it's more like 75% or higher. Once you get to that level, then you can start thinking of looking for a harvest low. I think that we're probably a lot closer to that harvest low in corn than we are in soybeans. Soybeans have come from a lot higher level than the corn has. The corn kind of got down to cheaper prices, and as I say, we are below the cost of production for a lot of guys, so finding offers is going to be that much harder than it will be for soybeans. And so I guess I would think that unless there's a hugely bullish surprise where we get immediate turn in the market, no matter what USDA says, if we do get a spike up, you'll find plenty of selling interest from just about all sides of the market on something like that.